Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm MVArts. Today not a typical tutorial, but a different kind of video instead, and I hope you enjoy this nevertheless. I haven't been doing a lot of personal stuff lately, so I thought I'd get into a project myself. And what I did, it's kind of cool and I'm really excited to share it with you. I worked on the intro for Zerkaa Thursdays. Right from the start, I immediately knew I wanted to do an intro because it's short and I looked for a project that I could easily get into. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So I sat down and started to do some research. I went online and started to look for some videos of Josh, Zerkaa. So pretty quickly I found the ASOS video, that was pretty cool. Also I found the Zerkaa video, and that is pretty much a fan favorite, so I had to include that one. And at last I found that I really like that one myself, the upside down video where he's on the line bike. So this is really where the fun started. I could experiment with what style was I going to use. Of course I have my own style for MVRs, that is that stylized character, that sphere with the long limbs. But I didn't think that was really suited for Zerkaa Thursdays. Lately I have been experimenting with a different style as well. So this is based off a children's book illustration, if you will, that I 3Dified, if that is a word. So after I decided that I didn't want to go with these two styles, I thought I'd go back on the internet. That's when I thought, let's see if there's something out there already that is created for them. Then I came across Zerkaa's Instagram, where he posted a picture of a concept art for the U2's Pop. That is that figurine they had made for the Sideman. And of course this is a pretty nice base and I really like the design. So I thought, this is cool, but I really want to give it my own spin. So after that I moved this little brainstorm session to Photoshop. Up front I have to say my drawing skills are terrible. I have to build up layers and layers and layers before it starts to come close to even a remotely good drawing, so bear with me. To the best of my abilities, I tried to sketch 3 versions of Zerkaa, and on top of that I tried to draw them in a dynamic pose. The initial plan was to pick one of them and have a little animation with that character. Of course, I ended up liking all of them and I couldn't choose one. So I thought, why not include all of them? And that's when I thought of making a mannequin-like shot, or a freeze-time shot if you will. For the upside down Zerkaa, I thought I'd give him the line bike. What I did is I wanted to make a dynamic pose, of course, so I went online and searched for a reference photo of a BMXer. So on Zerkaa's Instagram I found this photo of him at this event in Ibiza. And I thought this is an interesting pose as well. So when I drew this character, I immediately saw that the scene needed something extra. I had given the Zerkaa the line bike in the other one, and I thought this scene is a bit empty. So that's when the idea came to me to make the scenery float mid-air. But on the other hand, it shouldn't be distracting and you should be able to look behind it. So I scribbled around the character some of the ideas I had to fill up the scenery. For Zerkaa, the pose was pretty easy. I had to rap into the mic, of course. But I thought I could give it a little twist. So I wanted him to point his phone at the camera and you could read the Spotify charts with Zerkaa run on it. So after this little planning session, I went ahead and got into ZBrush. This is where I can easily block out a character. This is something I learned from Shane Olsen. It's a legendary guy. He has made the 3D character workshop and it's insanely good. If you ever want to learn something like that, I highly recommend it. Unfortunately, I didn't record this, but I can show you this animation instead. So usually what I do is I use primitive shapes to build up the individual pieces of a character. So the limbs, the body, or the head. Whenever I feel satisfied with the blockout of a character, I can use Dynamesh to blend it all together. Back into Blender, I started retopologizing the mesh. Because I knew I wanted to do a cloth simulation, I added a subdivision to it as well. For this project, I used Marvelous Designer. Marvelous Designer is an awesome tool where you can simulate clothing. As a freelancer, you don't always have the money to buy the expensive software, but this is where Marvelous Designer is awesome. This is so awesome because you can just pay 50 bucks and you have Marvelous Designer for a month. You don't have to charge your client with a shitload of money because you can just calculate that 50 bucks instead of the whole price. For example, this multicolor sweater was made in Marvelous Designer. So if you don't know where to start, go on Google and search for sewing patterns for, say, a sweater. And then you can just replicate that pattern in Marvelous Designer. So you know, the funniest thing happened when I was designing the hoodie. Of course I started to design it to go around of the head. But when I simulated it and took it off of the head, I saw that it was so large that it was even larger than his whole body. That was so funny. He had like this giant bag that was resting on the back of his body. So I knew that designing this sweater wasn't going to be exactly a match for what he's wearing in the line bike video. But nevertheless, I thought this is a good opportunity to bring in some more color because Josh is genuinely wearing a lot of black. And I thought it's nice to have a bit more color in there. So when I was googling the Sideman clothing, I also came across this picture of Josh where he's in magician mode. So up until this point I didn't have an ending, and seeing this picture gave me the idea of the ending you can see in the end result. So that's nice and all, but this also meant that I had to work in one more version of Josh. But in a funny way, it really brought the story together, you know? I had this concept where he is like a magician that froze time. For the ending, I thought it would be cool if Zerkaa just blinked, just like a hypnotherapist would snap to get someone out of hypnosis. Have you ever looked at the YouTubes? All of them, I swear, all of them have that squinty eye, that happy squinty eye. And that was quite challenging because I had to open up the eye, and for that I had to find a matching style. And as you can see, that took some experimenting, because if you look at this, it just creeps me out, you know? It's also pretty interesting how I did the card trick. That's what I called it, the card trick. First of all, I modeled one card and projected the UVs from the top view. Using the extra curve objects, that's something you can find in the add-ons of Blender, you can add into your scene a spiral curve. With an array modifier, I duplicated the cards 25 times to end up with 25 cards. Now I could influence the distance and also the rotation of the cards. At this point, I always like to back up just before I apply a modifier. After applying the array modifier, I adjusted the tilt. You can do this in edit mode with Ctrl T. Now with the applied modifier, I could go into edit mode, open up a UV editor, and now I could package the UVs because there are 25 cards, not just one. Then I exported the UVs overlay. On Google, I found this set of 25 cards that had an extension of SVG. Also, they were labeled for commercial reuse. So back over in Illustrator, I adjusted some of the colors. Then all I had to do was lay them out in a square format, match them up with the UV layout, and you want to have the cards distributed in a random way. At last, I figured out the timing, then enabled the physics and let the simulation do the rest. The location was pretty easy. I created a sphere, I duplicated it. For one of them I gave it a modifier that is the edge split, and for the other one I gave it a modifier wireframe. I experimented with adding in some realistic looking ground, but after all I thought this is not really matching the styles. So I ended up deleting it and I went with this more basic looking floor that had a bit more level to it. With the location in place, I could import the characters. The characters were made in a separate blend file so I could link them in. After that I created a camera, I animated the camera and rendered out a preview. I took that PNG sequence and brought it over to Premiere. There I edited to the music, and when it was finished I asked my dear colleague, who is an actual editor, to give me some feedback. She was kind enough to give me some feedback and it really helped out the edit in the end. So for example, she told me to take more time when we focus on a character and speed it up when we're moving. And that's what I did, and that really gave it a more dynamic feeling. So with that in mind, I redid the animation back in Blender. So this time I took a different path with the camera so I had more time for the moving holds. Back in Premiere I had to redo the edit to the music, it was just a tiny edit. So at this point the preview was looking good, so I could actually render out the sequence in Blender. So this is it. This is how I made Zerkaa Thursday's intro. Obviously I was not hired and this also gave me more creative freedom. However, I still had to make sure that it was matching his style and matching his channel. I believe it was a Wednesday when I uploaded. I did not expect to happen what happened. I just hoped for some people that appreciated it, but the amount of upvotes it got, it was just insane. I'm humbled, I'm grateful. Without you guys, you would not have seen it, and I would not have ended up in the Reddit video, as you guys might have seen.
Zerkaa Thursdays needs this. A professional animator made an intro.
Yep, that's me.
Oh my god!
Oh my god, indeed!
Mate, Claire certified. Here you go, lads.
Oh, thanks, mate. Well, it got even better. He actually used it in his most recent video. I believe that is the girlfriend versus best friend video. I'm so humbled, I am so grateful. Thank you guys a lot. I hope you enjoyed this video as well. If you did, please leave a like, please leave a comment. If you want to see more content in the future, subscribe to the channel. As always, stay creative, keep safe. Ciao.